Hello, everybody, and welcome to the SoxProspects.com podcast, the web's #1 source for information on the Boston Red Sox from top to bottom, from Fort Myers to Worcester, across the Pike to Fenway, and all stops in between. Thank you all for listening. My name is Chris Hatfield. I am the executive editor of Sox Prospects, and the invasion of the podcast is continuing. My control over this broadcast is slowly slipping away. We are multiplying. Last week it was Mike usurping Ian Cundall's normal spot. Ian is back, and we've brought James Dunn, who's really Jim, but he goes by James for the website, to be sporting, actually, which we could probably mention that. That's something we can talk about on here. But yeah, I am joined by editor-in-chief Mike Andrews. How are you, Mike?
Very good. How are you?
I'm good. You all will recognize Ian Cundall's voice. Hello, Ian.
Hi, you would think after all this time I know where the mute button is on my podcast app, but
they're used to the pause. They're used to it at this point. And the aforementioned James Dunn. Hello, sir.
Hello. How are you?
It's good to have everyone on here. And this is when we refer to the SoxProspects.com brass. This is the brass. These are the four folks who are in charge of the site, I guess, to put it bluntly and artfully. This is the crew that
like platinum or like emerald after our 20th anniversary.
Yes, it is the emerald anniversary
Jubilee. Like, what is this, the diamond jubilee or something? It's not actually, but we got to keep it
that's
royal
100.
on here. No, it's not. It's like 70 or something.
I mean, that's a British thing. You know all about
it is. I know.
Yeah.
It's the diamond jubilee was 60th. 60 years. Sorry.
Put another shrimp on the Barbie. All right.
Oh, I guess the term is also used for the 75th anniversary in the human lifespan. Didn't know that.
Well,
you learn something new.
We're not quite there yet. We're only I don't like to do math, but we're at 20. And this is the second episode of our 20th anniversary extravaganza, just kind of pulling the curtain back a little bit to give you all some insight into what's got us to where we are over the last 20 years and how we got here. And maybe just to start, I hope we made this clear last time, but the #1 reason we got there is the fact that all y'all care. All y'all bother coming to the website and downloading the podcast and following us on the social media platform formerly known as Twitter. That's why we're here. That's why we do what we do. That's why the site has been a thing for as long as it is. So thank you all for allowing us to be here doing this, talking about this stuff today. You can support the show in the normal ways, rate and review us on iTunes, Spotify, etc. when you're discussing what the different anniversaries are with friends of yours. Mention that we are on our Emerald anniversary, and you can support us on patreon.com/SoxProspects. Next episode, we're going to get back to your emails at podcast@SoxProspects.com because we want to talk about what you all want to hear about. Enough about that. Gentlemen, let's dive right in. Last episode, Mike and I spoke for a long time. Hopefully y'all liked that, about how the site started, how we got started with the site, what we do, who we are. And maybe we should just take this, I don't know, do we want to go length of time, which I think would be Jimmer, or do we want to do, maybe we start with James? People here, Ian. Do we want to start with Jimbo? Yeah.
I think we asked the questions and they both can answer.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay. Let's do that. Mike, you've got an idea of what you want to ask first. I mean, do we want to start with who are you?
Yeah.
Who's your daddy and what does he do?
Ian, I've had some friends that listen to the podcast regularly and they ask me quite a bit like, hey, I listen to these guys every week and I don't really know who they are. I would love to just know just a tiny bit. What college did you go to or something? Can you just throw us a bone, like 1 minute on what your background is?
Sure. And also for the record, I started before James. I would like to.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yes.
All right. I couldn't remember. For some reason, I think of Jim as this like institution that's been with the site like since its inception. I don't know why I think this.
I started the year before he did.
Okay. All right.
I have that old man energy. That's that's what it is.
Well, y'all are old, so that's what happens.
Yeah, you are a baby. Right, child, tell us.
So yeah, my name is Ian. I grew up I grew up in the Boston area, on the South Shore, and that's kind of where I got started. Obviously grew up a Red Sox fan. And then I went to college out in the Midwest at Michigan, as Chris alluded to. You've probably heard me make references to Michigan on here because that's really what I care about the most still. Michigan football is very important to me. And if you follow me on Twitter or X or whatever it's called now, you'll have seen my emotions can be heavily dictated by how Michigan football is playing. But yeah, so I went to school there, and I actually started working for the site when I was still there. After a summer interning in Washington, D.C. for a government agency. That was when I started going to games. And after that, during that summer, I got my start actually. This is funny. I just cold emailed Mike and was basically like, "Hey, I live in DC and I can go to the Frederick Salem games. Is there anything that I can get to help the site?" And you were like, "Yeah, can you get photos?" And so my first job was I took a photo of Engel Beltre and Oscar Tejeda, and I think they're still both up on the site. And one of them is a great photo because Tejeda is like posing for the camera.
Nice.
So that was my first experience with the site, was doing that, and that was even before I was doing anything for the site officially. Then in the off season, I applied for an open position, editing scouting reports, and got it. And it pretty quickly evolved into bigger responsibilities via the helping hand of Chris Mellen, and the rest is history. And now here we are, over a decade later, still here. And in that time, yeah, there were several moves, including one out of the country for graduate school for a couple of years, but always stuck with it. Flew back and forth way too many times when I was living in London, but including missing some pretty important events to come back for spring training one year. That was not great, but probably shouldn't have done that in hindsight. But yeah, no, it's been fun, and yeah, now I oversee all scouting activities at the site, and write all the scouting reports, write a bunch of other stuff, and do the podcast are my main responsibilities.
Your rise was pretty meteoric. Like, feel like after we hired you, as like the whatever that is, like scouting report editor, kind of like an entry level position, you were like director of scouting within like 18 months. I feel like, or
No, it was whenever Mellen left. I don't remember exactly when Mellen left, but yeah, I mean, I think it helped that Mellen liked me because we met once and just like talk strategy, and he was really helpful in just like he encouraged me to start going to games, and we would talk about stuff. And then kind of through him, I met some more scouts and other people. And I also randomly met some people when I was living in DC and just going to the Frederick games because I mean, I guess I can say it now. The reason I was going to the games is because I wasn't 21 yet, so I couldn't drink at the bars in DC. So I literally had nothing to do in the evening. So I would just go to baseball games instead. So I would just go to because I had my car down there. So and a bunch of my friends were all 21 and I wasn't yet. So I was just like, well, I guess I can just go to baseball games instead and not risk anything because DC is very strict with certain things that are frowned upon. So yeah, so that was kind of how I met some people there, and then through Mellen I did, and kind of expanded from there. And yeah, now it's a lot of fun. I'd still my favorite part of the job is going to games. I mean, I go to a bunch of games each year, get to travel, see all the affiliates. So it's a very rewarding job being able to see these guys, from the start, all the way kind of till they make the majors or with the Red Sox or with someone else. Cause yeah, I think that's the coolest part, is just kind of like tracking the progression of the players and being able to see how they change, see how they evolve, get to rewrite the reports and be like, oh, I missed on this because this player made an improvement. Things like that are really rewarding when you see that.
You're in the Boston area now. It means we get to go to plenty of Worcester and Portland games, and you used to get to go to Lowell a lot, right? And
yeah, that was my favorite. Lowell was the best.
Right.
Oh.
And you're flying to some games too, right?
Yeah, so we usually get down to Greenville, get down to Salem. Obviously, we do spring training. We used to do instructs. Unfortunately, that doesn't really happen anymore in the way it used to. If I had to pick a time, honestly, I think instructs was my favorite because instructs is like spring training without people, which is the best because it's just baseball people. There's like 10 fans in the stadium, and it was always the best, like the top prospects that were on the younger side, and all in one field, the talent level. You got to see the other teams. Like that was your first kind of introduction to the DSL guys coming over stateside. So like instructors, where you get your first look at like the Devers types, guys like, or the draftees too, usually if they didn't end up playing in Lowell during the summer, especially the high school guys. So that was one of my favorite times, was being able to go to instructs too in the fall. But obviously that's not, the Red Sox don't do it the same way they used to anymore. So that's not really worth it anymore. But yeah, it's being able to travel. And obviously the reason we can travel is all the support of the listeners and the readers. So I want to thank you all for that, because that's what makes it possible for us to be able to go out and, go to all these games and put in the legwork necessary to kind of run the operation we have here on the scouting side.
Best part of working for the site, I think, for me, getting to go to these games and travel and see everything. By far, love it.
For me, it's the sushi.
It's also
SushiProspects.com.
I do think that is kind of what separates us, though, is that there are other team sites, but I don't think a lot of them are as comprehensive as we are, or probably have like the ability, frankly, to be able to go to as many games. And because you can glean a lot from talking to people and from stats and things like that. Like, not a lot, but some can be gleaned from that. But I do think that you need to be able to get your boots on the ground and kind of have your own opinions. And I think that's one thing that we've been pretty good at, is like we will differ on players from even like scouts or other people that we talk to. And I think it's helped too with identifying guys really early in the breakout process. Like, I think our track record has been pretty good, especially these last couple of years, as we've been able to get more information. We've been kind of refining the process and getting much better with it. We're able to get on guys really early and be able to identify, these are the guys that we need to watch. And I think over the last couple of years, we've been really good at that. I'm like looking at some of the Miguel Blazes this year, getting Johan Fran Garcia, Yoel Cespedes up there pretty early. Roman Anthony even too, like and then past years, Miguel Blaze, Rafaela, like it's prospects can change so quickly these days. And I think that it's valuable to be able to, be out at the ballpark and see those guys, because that's where you're going to be getting the most accurate information.
I love it when you come back from where we used to be instructs, or when we come back from spring training and you're like, we're in on this guy before everybody else.
Yeah.
Let's pop him to like number 12 or number 8. And because you have that confidence, it gives us the confidence to be like, let's do it. And we're in on it before everybody else. That's one of my favorite parts of the gig.
Yeah, it's and that's what I'm saying. It's like one of those things that you're not going to see that if you're not at the field, if you're not, putting the work in, building those connections, because a lot of it is when I see them, but also it's like people will tip me off and be like, yeah, I just saw this team, this guy can really hit, or this guy's actually really good. And I think it also works too. It's not just the top guys. Like, I think our track record, and I think one of the things that I've definitely gotten better on over the years is evaluating pitchers. And I think that we've had a pretty good track record of like, and one guy I distinctly remember is, do you remember Joe Gunkel?
Yeah.
I saw him in Lowell, and I was like, oh, this guy's going to pitch in the big leagues. And he ended up making the big leagues and stick around very long. But he was like a senior sign, got a couple $1,000 bonus. And there's certain guys
weird
that
college too, right? Wasn't it some random
D3 or something?
Yeah.
But like, he was someone, we had in our rankings where most people probably had never heard of him, and that he ended up making the big leagues. And seeing things like that, it's pretty rewarding when you're able to like make a call like that and be right.
He apparently is still pitching in Japan.
Oh, is he? Good for him. So he's made a legit career out of this. That's awesome. Yeah.
He's with he's with the Fukuoka SoftBank Hawks, and he was with Hanshin Tigers last.
Because what was he? 2011 draft? 2012? No.
He was drafted in
13.
I would say 12 or 13.
13.
So you got to be careful
13.
when you pronounce that team name.
Yeah. That was a dangerous one.
That was, that's why I paused. He was, it doesn't say his college. What the heck?
Oh, I have it. He went to Westchester.
Wow.
Westchester.
Which I'm guessing is in Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania. Yep. Yeah.
He's from Pennsylvania.
Brown used to wrestle them.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Their wrestling team, not just not their baseball team. But yeah, I think Pennsylvania. Yeah.
Well, let's circle back to the scouting data and relationships and all that stuff in a minute. Let's go to James, maybe.
Yep, agreed. You're
James,
a natural.
just give us a minute. Like, who are you, dude? Are you Jim or are you James?
I'm whoever you want me to be, man. I am very happy to be whoever you want. So when I started with the site, there was already a Jim, and I didn't want to confuse anyone, so I just rolled in as James, and we had it just sort of stuck with me. So
Jim Crow is still here.
Yeah, Jim Crow.
Yeah,
he's
for a very long time.
MVP of our writing staff. and he's been
2011.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a banner year because we also added Will Woodward, I think, in the same application process that October as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Will
have,
and
I
I
have
came,
the emails up right now. Where do we get to them? I did this to Neoli too, but
came aboard at the same time. Yeah.
go ahead.
So yeah, I'm originally from Melrose, so I'm North Shore. Unfortunately for you, Ian. I went out to school out in University of Rochester in Rochester, New York. Graduated in 03. Got to see some pretty awesome Rochester Red Wings teams out there with Lou Ford, Michael Restovich, Michael Kadire, Justin Morneau. So they had some pretty stacked teams back in those days. Was back in the Boston area for quite a while. Found the site in around, it was the Futures at Fenway in 2006. This huge guy named Justin Masterson came in out of the bullpen, and I'd never heard of him or seen him before. And he struck out like 5 out of the 6 guys he faced, and everyone was hopeless against him. So I looked him up, and he that led me to the site, and I sort of poked around following it ever since then. A few years later, an opening popped up for a web editor and stats coordinator position. And I applied for that. Got to the final round of the interviews, and someone else got the job.
Mm-hmm.
But 2 months later, the staff writer job opened up, and I picked that up, and me and Will and I think a couple other people came on board at that time. But Will and I stuck
that was
around.
a banner year. Luke Lavoie
Yeah.
was in that, I think, hiring process
yes,
as well.
I believe it was. Yeah. So we all came aboard around then, and so just sort of picked up from there. Writing cup of coffee notes. We did a lot of breaking news in those days. They signed a minor league free agent.
Sorry, I just distracted everyone in the chat.
Yes,
that's on me.
So like Justin Germano would sign, and we'd write a news article on it. Someone would get promoted, and we'd write that up. And the news page was just full of promotions and minor league signings. And
we spent so much time and effort on that. And then one day, like, we went and did the analytics, and it was like there are 17 people reading this, and it took us 1,000 hours of our time for the. So the breaking news lasted for a little while, and then we're like, that's not what our readers want.
We also Twitter kind of took that over. Right. So like around 2011, we were on Twitter, but we weren't really using it in the way we were using it a few years later. So it was just kind of a way to tweet out our own articles at that point. And then within a couple of years, it seemed to pick up as the way where we would, if they signed a guy, we would just put it on Twitter. We weren't going to take the time to write a whole article up on it. And I've been living in Syracuse since 2014, and I've been up here with my family since then. So
3 kids.
Three kids, yes.
Yeah. All under like 6?
Yeah, no, 10, 7, and 3. So it's they keep me plenty busy.
I can imagine.
And so as far as the site role, I mostly managing the news page. Cup of coffee, notes, end of year awards, anything like that. Player of the month, I kind of coordinate who's writing, who's editing, and anything of that type.
Managing the moderators a little bit.
Yeah, I do some of the stuff on the forum.
Yeah,
making sure that the same guy who signs up once a month and gets banned, we ban him again.
Stop re-signing up.
Yeah,
we know it's you.
Yeah.
So I did, in fact, go back into my email, and I have the July 2011 job application reviews, which is kind of funny. I didn't realize Jim Kroll also applied for that web editor job, and I don't think we hired either of you for that.
Who did we hire?
I think Andrew K.
Oh, he was pretty good.
He was solid too. I mean, I'm looking at the people who applied, and it was a pretty damn good crop for like 6 applications.
Wow.
You had your blog at that point, The Done Deal, which
yes, that's me.
I just clicked the link and it still works.
That's an awesome name, by the
way.
Thank you. It's funny. Even at that point, shout out to Mellen, noted that maybe in consideration for a writer slot in the off season. Nailed that one. and someone also mentioned that, like, I think Mike on Kroll did say, potential to come in some role, if not this one. So yeah, we nailed that one. And then let's see, I had the emails from the actual writer application. Oh, I was in the wrong, window. Let's see. Da 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 da. This is great audio. Yeah, let's see. You were moving on. Okay, yeah, in the review of the applications that October for the position, it was during Halloween. I apparently dressed up as the most interesting man in the world that year and bragged about how hammered I got the night before. That's lame. And I wrote about you. My only comments were that the link that the guy who reviewed the applications sent me didn't work for your stuff. That's all I wrote. That's how, but I did say you should move on. So yeah, we knew then you were good. So, but that was a banner crop, like I mentioned. That was Will. That was Luke Lavoie, who was with us for a while. I think we had one other person as well. So yeah, glad that we have you on. Thank goodness, because it's been certainly necessary. I guess looking back over I mean, y'all have both been with the site for over a decade now. I mean, what kind of sticks out to you? Is it highlights versus events, things that happened? I mean, we'll get to funny stories and maybe we can go to that now, but when you look at the evolution of what you've done for the site and what the site is now, really what are kind of the big things or moments or concepts or ideas that stick out to you that define that period with the site, and define that however you want, because I'm interested in just kind of whatever comes to mind for you. Maybe start with Ian.
Sorry, I was distracted. The Drive just won the championship.
Hey,
so
go Greenville Drive.
yeah.
Gatorade bath.
I don't know if I have a specific story right now. Maybe while James is talking, I'll think of one. But I would say just I think one of the overarching things and what makes this so rewarding is just the relationships and connections I've been able to build through it. I have some people that I would consider really good friends that I've met through doing this job. And just meeting them at the ballpark or getting to know them offline through, or meeting them initially through baseball and now getting to know them like offline and becoming like real good friends that I've known for years. And now we'll talk about things that aren't even baseball related, or when I see them, we'll catch up and go out to dinner, go to lunch, whatever, after games. And I think that's just been the coolest part of it, is just, it's not just being able to go to the games, it's also that you get to meet some really cool people along the way, and that ordinarily you're probably not going to get to see. I would never run into these people most likely in my day-to-day life, but when you're at the ballpark, there's people from all over the country, people, because teams are bringing in different teams, every team is scouting the levels. And so yeah, I've just been able to meet a lot of people, get to do things like Instructs is a good example. After, I specifically remember, after games, there's go to like PF Chang's for dinner and just talk about baseball, talk about life, and stuff like that is just a lot of fun. Or there's a certain hotel in Fort Myers that there's had really good wings according to a scout friend, and just going there and go to the bar after the game and have the wings there. And there's little things like that meet a lot, and being able to build like true relationships through the game and through this work has been a lot of fun.
And I'll just buttress what Ian just said, and in terms of building the relationships, I think that you're one of the best on the staff, if not the best on the staff that we've ever had, in that sense of building relationships with professional scouts, amateur scouts, front office members, minor league staffers, and I'm just incredibly impressed by it. And I mean, I saved my one F-bomb for this, and that, like, talking to a front office guy and just saying that guy Ian is really fucking good. He's really good at his job. I'm so impressed with him. And we all feel the same way. It's just incredible the work you do in terms of the scouting, your scouting eye, and the relationships you've built with scouts, and the way you're able to observe it and also parse scouting data is just incredible. So thank you for everything you do.
Thank you. That was very kind. That was I was not expecting that, but yeah, it's it's a lot of fun, and I'm honored that I get to do it, and that you guys give me the platform to be able to. And I think it's been great, what we've been able to build here, and the fact that we're still growing this long on, I think is pretty cool. And even having as the years every year, it seems like we're getting bigger and bigger, which is kind of crazy.
It is
I thought
nuts.
it would stop at some point, but it's kind of just keeping going and going. And the fact that the interest is still there and frankly growing at an exponential rate is just kind of crazy, especially.
I posted this morning that our first entire year we got 5,000 page hits the whole year, and then this year I think we're going to get 18 million. Which
is that September to September, like September 20 to
no, that
September
was like
20?
probably September to, so it's prorated. But even if it's prorated, that's probably 18,000
Sure.
Versus 18 million.
That's wild. Dunzo, what about you, man?
Yeah. So one thing I've been really proud of on the site is the way the cup of coffee has evolved. It's been really cool to see how it's kind of become the lifeblood of the site. Just the daily posting kind of keeps the news page up and running and keeps people connected with the site, keeps people reading, keeps people, up to date with the going on. And it also brings in, new blood and new writers and new people coming in to do that work and get them interested in working on the site. So, and if you go back to the early cup of coffee and what it's evolved into and how polished it's become and how professional it looks, in the early days, it was kind of just a recap of the box score. It was like Julio Zeleda got a single and drove in a run, and the Paw Sox won. And now it's, who are the top prospects? What did they do? What is this in context? How have they been playing recently? It really, I think it does a good job, not just recapping what happened in the games, but what that means and who's doing what and why it's important. And I'm really proud of the way that's developed over the years. And as far as like a feature, back in 2020 when there were no games going on due to COVID, we ran this draft retrospective series where we recapped every single draft from 2003 when the site started through. I don't think we did 2020 because it was only a month or two old, but we did through the 2019 draft. So, and it took a lot of work and a lot of effort and a lot of coordination. But what we did was we did a pick by pick. And then we did the second day we did like an analysis piece.
What a lift that was, my God.
Yeah, and it was sort of came into my head is this sort of fun thing we could do, and it turned into kind of this bear coordinating. But it was fun to look back on all those things, and it's important to do too to take a look at how the organization has changed over the years and their philosophy and how that's affected the guys who've come through the system. And it was fun to do. But yeah, we were talking about this off the air before we started, but Chris and I in the middle of the night one night just talking and trying to coordinate this and figure out how we were going to post and where we were going to post and yeah, it was
wild.
A lot of work.
Sitting in the sports bar in Fort Myers this past year in 2023, and just we're talking about the draft, and like I think about this stuff like every day. Like I feel like I know the draft history of the team pretty well, but you guys like blew my mind. It was like, oh, I know exactly who the 32nd pick is from 2007, and here's how far he went, and here's what college he went to, and he batted lefty, and I could not believe how in depth you guys could get off the top of your head with draft retrospective stuff when we were just sitting there, kind of shooting shit about it. It was pretty.
It was
crazy.
that night we were at the high top table,
yes,
right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I distinctly remember this with the WBC on in the background.
Yeah. Some people would not say that's impressive. They'd be like, "You guys are losers." But I'd be like, "Yeah, you're not wrong." I like
these things are not mutually exclusive.
Yeah, both true at the same time. Absolutely.
Yes.
If I can spend 15 minutes talking about Jake Davies, that's probably not good. But
I can't think of a better thing to talk about. But
I mean, what else are you gonna do with your time, man?
I will give also James props for I feel like back in the day, me and Chris used to have to babysit the news page like all the time, and now I don't even think about it. I just know that it's going to be in good shape, and it works and it flows, just because you're able to kind of get it all going, and that's really appreciated. So again, thank you for the hard work you do there.
It's been so helpful to just know that things are going to run and be really good, and we're going to come up with interesting ideas. I mean, that draft retrospective, I think, is probably, I mean, we've done a lot of cool things on the news page. Like, if we've had years where we've, had the time to go through and post, like, scouting reports for everyone in the top 60, or like a season countdown of everyone in the top 60. And some of that we've kicked to like social media at this point. But like, that draft retrospective is one of the coolest things we've done. I mean, just the level of depth we went into, and we were able to do that because there were no minor league games going on, and we had a bunch of writers who wanted to write stuff and, didn't have a cup of coffee every day to write. Right. And didn't, it was MLB, and it was the alternate training site, which I just realized, didn't they used to stream the alternate
No,
training
I
site?
was just about to say that, looking back on that, it's pretty cool that the Red Sox actually were like okay with streaming the ATS and allowing us to like watch it and post
You went
video
once,
of it.
didn't you?
I went the following year when they were
in the
playing
spring.
in
That's
the
right.
spring.
In
Yeah.
the April one. Yeah.
When they were playing in Worcester, but like we were allowed to like post video of that. Like, they gave us the okay to do that. And that was pretty cool that we could like, because I remember I was watching the games and was like tweeting, and we was able to like, take videos and tweet thoughts about certain guys. And like, that was our first look at Jeter Downs, unfortunately, and Connor Wong and things like that. And remember, they just kept like cycling through all these pitchers. Like, they found, who was the Seth Blair, like the guy they found via that article from the New York Times. They didn't actually, but he had that
Seemed
article in
like
the
it.
New York Times who out like all the guys were pitching at his house during COVID. And like,
Yeah.
I remember, it was wild, like the lengths we were going to be able to have minor league baseball during the pandemic.
It's content, needed it.
I mean, it was, yeah. I mean, we needed something, and between the ATS stuff and the draft retrospective, we were able to basically have like normal content for an entire summer, which was pretty cool. Especially when we thought there was going to be no baseball at all for that level.
That was cool too, because the Sox hadn't had like a really top prospect for a couple of years at that point, and that's where Casas really started to step out into his own and be like, okay, this guy's really legit. Like, it's hard to take too much from the ATS, but like, this guy looks above and beyond.
That he showed up at his age and wasn't like completely overmatched.
Yeah, against AAA and MLB veterans and
MLB
stuff.
taxi squad guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was him, and it was when York, they drafted York and they sent him there for a week, and it was like, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
What I mean, we kind of alluded to this. Maybe this is the point to get to. Like, what like we've been begging people, not begging, but asking for funny stories and memorable moments and things that they remember from their time at the site that are, kind of funny to look back on. And maybe we'll go to Jim first this time. But what do you have any like favorite kind of funny moments, whether it's spring training or just something that happened in, on the website or at Futures or anything like that?
Yeah, so in spring training 2022, we're on NESN on live television, and Tom Caron asked me who's a potential breakout player in the Red Sox system, and we're all spending the entire weekend talking about Miguel Blaze, except for the fact that I'd only learned how to pronounce his name a day earlier, and I wasn't comfortable saying it on live television.
I was wondering if you were going to cop to this.
So we're going through, and my head is spinning. I'm like, I can't say his name. I got to think of someone else. So I came up, fortunately, with Edison Polino, who turned into, we liked him, but he wasn't a top, he wasn't a top 10, top 20 guy at that point. And we liked him. And so fortunately, I really appreciate him stepping up that year and making me look like not a moron on television. So.
Well, I'll say one thing, that player pronunciation of names is not something you should ever let stand in your way. I still cannot pronounce Garen Cicchini to this day. So
I think you just did.
Was that right? I still can't remember which was right.
That was absolutely right.
So yeah.
The funny thing being, you never pronounce Polino's name right.
Yes.
Me? Oh, probably not. I don't know.
You give him the tilde on the end when it's like,
Polino.
It's just, I think it's just Polino. But whatever. The way you say it's better. I don't know if it's right.
I don't think it is right. It's Paulinho, not Paulinho. But yeah. That is, I
Well,
don't know. I'm very bad at pronouncing names. It's been something. It's a rough one for me, and I'm working on it. But
well, the
I've
funny
never
thing
let it stand in my way, because my rule of thumb is if you say it confidently, then just keep going. As long as you don't question yourself or like pause and make it obvious, just keep going. Like, you just got to say it confidently and just keep going, even if it's wrong.
It's funny, the video of us on Nessun when Jim says that, I tried to keep a poker face about it, but I was just kind of like, oh, okay, because I did not that he was wrong, but I was just like, why didn't he say Blaze? Like, it was teed up for you, like, right, there was a softball, and I was just like, all right, we're rolling with Edinson, let's go. And it worked out great. Like, he got into the top 10 by the end of the year. It was awesome. I was like, all right, let's do it.
Yeah. Yeah, he made me look good, so I really
Edinson
appreciate
fan
that.
club.
So I'll be rooting for him for
Ed and Edinson. Love it.
Yeah.
All right, Kundal, what about you? Other than having to deal with me, once a week on the podcast for years.
So I think a lot of my moments are like specific games or things like that. And
Sure.
I think because the one thing I've learned is you'll still see stuff at baseball games that you've never seen before.
Yeah.
And I distinctly remember, and I just looked up the date. It was July 13th, 2015. And it was Bark in the Park Day at Lowell, which led to this just incredible headline from some blog that isn't ours, some Lowell Spinners blog.
Okay.
A balk-off win on Bark in the Park Day. And what happened was it was an extra innings, and
right.
the second and stuff happened. There was second and third, and the other team, and I think it was the Scrappers. I think they're
Mahoning
from
Valley.
Mahoning Valley. Yeah.
Yep.
The manager called for an intentional walk, and the catcher was from Taiwan, and his English was not good, and he didn't really know what he was doing. I don't know if he'd ever given an intentional walk before, and this was before that you could just like say 4 balls, they go to first base.
Other context, no zombie runner at this point. This is like the guys are in their way.
No, it was second and third in the 11th inning, and we were probably on the verge of position players pitching, which in Lowell you got multiple times a season.
Oh yeah.
And the catcher got up and got out of his stance and stepped out of the catcher's box before the pitch was thrown, and that's a balk on the catcher, which I had no idea. And it's why when you see in the majors, they would always stand up, the pitch would be thrown, and then they would step to the right and catch it. Apparently, if you leave too early, you have to stay within the box until
it's the one time as a patched umpire I remember learning this and just being blown away. There's a box that's chalked in behind the plate. It only mattered when you were doing an intentional walk. You could set up 4 feet outside if you were in your
makes
crouch.
No sense. Like, there's no
terrible.
reason for
it's
it.
So dumb.
But so I played baseball a long time and watched a lot of baseball games. I did not know that was a rule. And I remember because I was sitting with a bunch of scouts, and I don't think anyone knew that was a rule. Really? And the funniest part is the manager was an ex-MLB guy, and he got like halfway to the mound, and then because he was going to just start, like, he had his hat off. When you can tell a manager's about to like get into it with the umpire, and then he just like shook his head and just turned around and walked back because he knew it was the right call and there was nothing he could do. And I just remember, like, that was one of those moments where I was like, oh, really? Like, baseball is sweet. Like, you literally can go to the park and see something you've never seen before and didn't know existed. And that was when I learned that I don't know the rules as well as I thought I did. So I needed to brush up on my knowledge. But that one's always stuck with me, even though it was obviously like 7-8 years ago. But it's still a good, great memory from that time.
If I could just really quick, Mike, because I know you just put something in the chat, but we have a few other like weird at game things that we've seen that I figured it would, like, just leading out of that were like, I can remember you, me, and Mellen at the Randy Consuegra game.
Yeah, that was like Lowell opening day in like 2007 or something.
I would have been up there, so that sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. that was before I was there.
Yeah.
And he came in and he
started, I think.
Right. And he was throwing gas in warm-ups, and then he came in and he missed the catches like altogether for like 6 pitches in a row and hit the backstop. And it was like, I've never seen anything like this before. He couldn't even hit the catcher's glove or like in the realm of the catcher. And then he got pulled after an inning. And I don't think, did he ever pitch again?
He made one more start and did the same thing. Didn't even, like, I think he made 2 starts that season, and he like still pitches in like the Venezuelan league. like he's fine now. But
Yeah.
yeah, because we came in and we thought he was going to be this like sleeper.
Yeah.
And then there's just like, we're looking at each other like, what's happening?
Yeah.
This is weird. Yeah. I'm trying to think if there's any other at game stuff that I can think of. Not really. I mean, other than like Rafael Devers, I got to get his career line at games I went to in the minors, but he homered pretty much every game I saw him when I saw him in the minors. But anyway.
I was at the Devers AAA debut.
Mhm.
That was up here in Syracuse that Alex Beer actually talks about in his book, where he went 4 for 4 and he was 3 for 3. And then Syracuse brought in Neil Kotz, a major league veteran. He had been a lefty reliever for the White Sox for a number of years. By that, they bring him in, and that was, it'll be interesting to see how he handles, an MLB veteran, a guy who can, control his stuff. Devers hit an absolute bomb off. Like, just
I was at Devers' last minor league game. I think it must have been Pawtucket, and he was just mashed. And I remember went down to Narragansett that evening, was walking, hanging out with my father-in-law, having some beers, and I'm talking to him about Devers. And I think I got either a Slack or a text from you guys that Devers just got called up. So got to get him excited about Devers after seeing his last minor league game. It was pretty cool.
Nice. All right, Mike, you had a cool next topic. So
I think I want to go to one last topic before we wrap up. Is just some of the readers or my friends that listen to the pod, like, want just a little bit of insight into how the rankings work. Just kind of pull the curtain back on how we do that. And I was just going to give a little bit of history of how it worked, because it hasn't always been the same. And then maybe the four of us can get into how it works now, for better or for worse. But from September 2003 until about mid 2005, I did the rankings on my own. It was kind of me flying solo. I had it split into two different sets of rankings for pitchers and hitters, because I wasn't smart enough how to kind of discern between the two. But it was me flying solo. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I was a little bit more stats heavy than scouting heavy, even though I did get to a decent amount of games back then. And then from 2005 till about 2013, I still set it on my own, but I took kind of input from the ownership team, Chris Mellen, Ian over the course of time, James over the course of time, and just like you guys telling me stuff, but I would still kind of set it on my own. And then we started doing it a little bit more professionally in the beginning of 2013. It was a collaborative discussion every month, where we kind of just talked about it. And then we didn't really have like an exact system, but we talked about it every month and then put the rankings up. And then starting in the mid 2015, we've had kind of like what I'd call a tally sheet or a spreadsheet, where we actually, each of us vote, have our own rankings, and then we average them out. Sometimes we rank out to 60. Lately, we've been ranking out to 80. We average them out, and then go from there. So I'll why don't you guys fill in the details of how that works every month and how much or how little we argue about it. I'll go to Chris first. Chris, you haven't been able to talk a lot this pod so far.
It's all right. People hear me every week. They don't need to hear more of my nonsense. Yeah, I mean, I think, first of all, I think we should give a shout out to Dick Duggan.
Oh yeah.
Who created the Google sheet that Ian just went into as well, as I can see. We have a Google.
I wanted to check. 2015. Have we really been doing it that long?
This spreadsheet goes back to 2017, and I think there was one before it, because at least one, maybe
that's
two,
what I was wondering,
because we did a fresh one every year. And then in 2017, I'm like, let's just use this one, like, and just keep adding tabs to it. Yeah. And now, so we've got this pretty sweet, like, it could, like I said, it goes all the way back to spring 2017, where Rafi Devers was the #1 overall prospect. We were unanimous through the top 5 of Devers, Jay Groom, Sam Travis, Bobby Dahlbeck, and Marco Hernandez. And then it starts getting funky when you get into like the 20s. We're fairly lockstep at that point, but some months, we're in the middle of the season, like, we kind of have the biggest, knockdown, drag out discussions and debates entering the year and coming out of the year. The beginning of the year ranking and the end of year ranking really are the most important two rankings, in my opinion. And I think y'all would probably agree, but those are the ones we put the most focus into and like really rethinking. And we also, it's kind of, I think the biggest debates we have are not even necessarily between players, but almost like theory, like ranking theory sometimes of like, should a guy move a certain number of spots based on your reconsideration of him? And it's like, I think we've kind of like, I have changed my thought on that mostly after being hit over the head with the dummy stick by Mike enough times on like, no, like, look, if I think something this month, like I should reflect that in my ranking. Right. It's like, as long as you're not doing that every month and just being
Right.
completely mercurial and, changing it
It's very
constantly.
hard, I think, to like to do what you think when it might not lock up with the logic of the previous month.
Yeah.
It's hard to be like, yeah, but I really don't think that anymore. I was dumb last month. Or this is going to look weird if I move this guy 5 points, but this is really what I believe. So I kind of I got to stick with what I believe based on my ranking philosophy is like, if there was a draft, I got to pick a guy, this is who I would pick. And sometimes that doesn't always jive with this guy had a great month.
Mm-hmm.
And it was better this month than last month, or this than the number 19 guy last month. So it's tough.
And sometimes we'll get like a report or something too, right? Like we get reports from Fort Myers, and that's when we get the questions of like, this guy had a 500 OPS this month. Why did he move up? Right. And that's not to say the instances where it's like, well, they moved up because 3 guys fell or something. Right.
Yeah.
Like, but so it's that talking through things. It's talking through like ceilings versus floors or, player archetypes and that kind of thing. And when we have those discussions, I learned so much just
Yeah.
from hearing you three talk about your reasoning behind guys. And, we certainly try to keep it respectful. And I think we're successful and keep it respectful. And I think we do that successfully 98% of the time, I
Yeah,
think.
we do fight.
Sometimes
And
friends fight,
sometimes we bark at each other.
as Piebald told us. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, I think we always get at the end of the day, it's to get to the best final product. Right. And I think we all are cognizant of that and aware of it and keep it in mind.
One concept I struggle with a lot is like, you can have a lottery ticket guy in in the DSL or in rookie ball, like Franklin Arias or something like that. And then you could have a guy that's a AAA reliever that this guy will have a .2 WAR for his career, but he'll make the majors and he'll do something like AJ Pleady or something like that. Like, what? Who would I really rather have if I got to pick in like a hypothetical draft? And I struggle with that one still to this day. Ian, I want to turn the question to you. And the one thing that's developed in pretty recent years is the scouting data and how that has affected rankings. Can you talk about, like, I guess a separate question is, I appreciate how much the input that you always give every month. It really helps me guide my rankings when I might be relying too much on stats, and especially the scouting data. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think that it's definitely helpful because obviously I get to see a lot of these players in the given season, but I might not be seeing like a certain team in a given month, for example, or I might not see Greenville until the summer, or I might catch them early in the season, but not later in the season. And it's really just helped that we've built this network where, if we have questions on guys, or if I see someone's having a really good month, I'm able to reach out and usually I can find someone who's seen that player in the last couple of weeks. And I think that's kind of like been the biggest change, is being able to get that information, or be able to get that, or be able to, get some additional like behind the curtains data to that can explain what's been going on with said player. And I think that's been a really important factor in being able to kind of like close those information gaps we've had in the past on players, or especially recently, like with the DSL, being able to like, talk to people who've seen those players, even if it was just for a couple games, has really been helpful. Because as Mike said, it's really hard to, without when there's always going to be a few guys in the rankings we've never seen. And I'd much rather be able to, get information from someone I trust on them, rather than having to just rely on like publicly available scouting reports or stats. And I think being able to get that information has been a really big separator and kind of helping us fine tune the process and make the rankings kind of hopefully as accurate as possible, or of the representative time frame, of course, because obviously they're always a snapshot in time. But yeah, I think that that being able to, whether it's through my own kind of what I've seen from the player, or being able to reach out and get feedback, solicit feedback from scouts or other people about the players, I think that it's definitely helped us all when we have that kind of information available pretty readily and quickly during the process.
James, can you close the gap in terms of, okay, we all post our personal rankings to a spreadsheet a week before rankings are posted. What happens from there, and how do we get to the point of publishing?
Yeah, so we sort of all four of us go in and we go one to 80, like Mike said. And my process, and it seems like this goes for everyone, but my process is I kind of see where my outliers are, where I'm differing from the rest of the crew. And then figuring out why. Is this something where a guy's made a change and I didn't recognize it? Is this guy a guy who hasn't been playing well and he's dropping a little bit and I need to look into it more? Or is the guy who I actually strongly feel is better or worse than the rest of the crew is giving them credit for? And so I sort of tweak based on that, based on where I see everyone else, and that's sort of where the discussion begins. We do the editing, we tweak our lists, and then we kind of post in the forums like, hey, you all have this guy around number 30, but look at his whiff rate is off the charts. Like I like him much better than I think you're giving him credit for. So let's reconsider him. And then sometimes we will, and sometimes we'll be like, well, this is a reason why we shouldn't, or this is a reason why we should be patient. I think a really good example is this month, where we had the 3, 4, 5, and we were sort of going back and forth on three players who are very close, and Miguel Blaze and Kyle Teal and Cedon Rafaela. And there's a lot of information on three guys that there are reasons why each one of those guys should be number 3. And we sort of step back and say, okay, we're going to take another month, and we're going to re-examine those guys for another month and see what more data we can get, because it's important to us to get to give you, the listener, the best information that we have. We don't want to be blasé about it. We want to do the best we can and really be considerate. And we don't want to just go with the hot hand. It would be very easy, given the hype he has, to just put Rafael third and forget about and go with the flow. But and we all like him very much. But we're like, okay, but Blaze has this going for him. Teal has this going for him. Let's step back. Let's reevaluate in a month. And I think that's an example of the consideration we try to go through.
Mm-hmm. For what it's worth, I did just find the September 2015 spreadsheet, which I insanely ranked 96 players in.
That's more than I've ever seen.
Mike Miller was number 96, but I should say I'm proud that I got out that far, because number 93 was Darwinzon Hernandez. And number 91 was Denny Reyes, both of whom pitched in the major leagues.
Am I on that list as having?
No, you weren't on the brass yet.
I don't think I was.
Oh no, you were. No, you were. You absolutely were.
I was, but I don't think I did the rankings. I don't
did.
think
No,
I
you did. You're on
at
here.
all. Oh, I am on here. Okay.
It's you, me, and Matt Hegel, actually.
Oh. And then we'd send it to Mike, and Mike would massage it and put it up.
Yeah. So I mean, number 1 at that point was 3 votes for Rafi Devers, 1 vote for Yohan Moncada, and I was the Moncada vote, stunningly. I don't know. Interesting. I was betraying my boy, apparently. Anyway, I mean, the rankings part it's fun to do. I think we've kind of hit a nice stride, because we used to, going from updating it every week to having more of a process, I think has been beneficial. I think each update means something.
I think Mike does make a good point, though, when he talks about how his process, because I do think that we do have different kind of ways or I don't know if priorities is the right word, but kind of what we're using as our baseline reasoning for rankings. and like Mike talked about how he would do it as if it was a draft, who would he take? Whereas I kind of look at it more like, if I was running a front office, who would I want in a trade?
Mhm.
Whether, and beyond that, it's also like, and that's combined with then, of course, like if I'm putting a grade on this player as a prospect, I'm going to try and put it in order, obviously, from the guy I would put the highest future value onto and on down. So I try to line it up with those two things. Whereas I'm guessing you guys might have slightly different like reasonings behind yours, but I think there are going to be some natural differences, because I think there is a difference in thinking about it the way Mike does versus like how I would think about it. But I think that can be a good thing too, because it gives you like multiple viewpoints on the same players, and you don't want to run into a situation where it's a bunch of groupthink where everyone is just like, yep, that looks good.
Mhm.
I'd rather have disagreements or situations where where I reevaluate someone because I'm, very different than the rest of you guys, than have it be like all, kumbaya and we just,
Sure.
have no discussion really.
Yeah, it's fine if we feel differently about guys, and that's why one of our Patreon rewards, we post our individual top 30s for $5 level and up patrons, and you can see where like sometimes we're in lockstep on guys, and sometimes even in the top 30 there'll be some pretty decent differences. And I think we'll disagree respectfully on the ranking, but get being different on the ranking, right? It doesn't mean your process is bad if I disagree on where you have a guy ranked. Especially when you go as deep as we do to go to like 60. I mean, the reason we go to 80 is because we eventually figured out that to get to 60, you probably need to rank 70. And we put 61 to 70 on Patreon for everyone on Patreon. But to get to that, you probably need to go out to 80. So that's why we go out that far now. We've learned not to debate, the 60s and
Yeah.
70s all that much.
Yeah, we have a
It's just,
pretty good like understanding that once you get to a certain point, it's just throwing darts and like
yeah,
there's no use quibbling over it. And whether that point starts at 35 or it starts at 52, we might disagree on it, and that might be different from month to month. But there's definitely that point where it's like whatever.
mhm. Yeah, like I'm looking at the that old spreadsheet right now, and like there's a player where the high ranking was 37 and the low was 58. And there's
Or
no
there can
way.
be a month where somebody posts the adds the cuts and pastes the wrong rankings from like a year ago into the rankings. And then Ian's
Maybe
like,
even recently.
Mike, what the F is wrong with you? Why is Tristan Costa still ranked in your top 40? Whoops. Sorry about that.
It happens to the best of us. I'm sure
Just
everyone's
an
everyone's done
outlier.
that. Everyone's done
Just-
that at least once. Right. It's like forgetting to unmute yourself on a Zoom call, pasting in the old rankings. I think that happened to one of my in-laws recently. What else do we got, Mike? I mean, we're looking back on 20 years here. We've talked about the news page. We've talked about rankings. I mean, I guess Ian and Jim too, but
Yeah, I mean, I want to thank some of our current staffers and former staffers, but just
well,
I don't know if everybody else has parting words or other topics we want to cover.
Well, before we do that, let's one other thing we did is we're kind of like piecing this together in multiple recording sessions. We were actually able to talk to Chris Mellen about we mentioned scouting on here as well. Let's put in here our discussion with Chris Mellen, and then we'll come back and do maybe final thoughts and parting words and all that. So Mike and I got on the horn with our old director of scouting, Chris Mellen, who went on to write for Baseball Prospectus for a time, co-ran their prospect team over there at a time when, they got pilfered by major league teams. That team they had there it was like Kevin Goldstein and then Jason Parks, and then, Chris and Nick Faleris ran it, and they had a number of guys that went on to work for teams. So it was cool to get his thoughts. So here's our, when we talked with Chris this past weekend. All right. And our next guest on this anniversary jamboree here at the podcast, joining me and Mike Andrews, is the Dean of Diesel, his regalness of rig himself, Chris Mellen, the original director of scouting of SoxProspects.com. Chris, it's always a pleasure to chat with you. We don't do it enough these days, to be frank, but we're all, a few years older, a few years wiser, and a few years with more responsibilities back at the homestead. But welcome back to the podcast, brother. It's good to have you.
Well, what an introduction. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be back. Feels good. You know, a lot of good memories popping back into my mind since you guys reached out. So I really appreciate you guys having me back on. And you know, this is a big milestone,
Mhm.
right? 20-year anniversary of the website. You know, like I said, a lot of good memories, a lot of good times. And you know, sometimes it feels like a dream. I was thinking a lot about it recently, and it does feel like a dream sometimes, right? What happened with the website in that late 2000, late
Yep.
you know, 2008, 9 into 10 and 11. So I appreciate you guys having me on.
Of course, we weren't going to celebrate where we're, you know, where we are now and how we got there without talking to you. I'm trying to think, when was the last time you were on the pod? Because when we used to do the podcast, we did the whole rotating panel thing. You were definitely on the first one. I actually have a photo, I think from the first, when we recorded the first podcast in Mike's basement. And I think you're playing with like a train set that
Yeah, I think we
like,
did it live in Mike's basement at the card table there.
yeah,
In the
and pass the
yeah,
mic around the table,
in the finished basement, right? I think we did,
Beastie
yeah, we
Boys
did that
style.
live. Then
Yeah.
we would do it, yeah, we did the rotating format. And I definitely, I think it was, I came back a couple times, I think, in my baseball prospectus days, I think to talk
Yes.
about the Red Sox top tens, right? The couple of
Yes.
ones, you know, the two or
Yes.
three that I did over there, right? So I think
Yep.
we definitely had, you know, podcast extravaganzas around the BP top 10
That's right.
rankings and then how it compared to the Sox prospect rankings.
I think
You
that's
guys
right.
remember that first podcast when you were just talking about the poker table? But we didn't have a mic yet, so we used headphones,
Right.
earpiece
Oh God,
headphones
that's
as
right.
the mic,
Yeah.
and passed it around to each other. And the audio was so bad.
Oh, it's probably
It's not
horrendous.
available.
Yeah.
No,
Don't go try and listen to it.
Right.
There's a reason.
But
lost
we definitely
episode.
did it in person. It was back in those days. I think we had to do it in person and we all
Right.
crammed into your basement.
Yeah, people
Did it at
drove
the
from
card
New Hampshire
table.
to come to Watertown. It was crazy.
Yeah.
I think it was at the three of us and Ian Theodoridis.
I think it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was.
Yeah. And then
That's a name from the past.
Right. Right. Well, I mean, maybe let's go all the way back. Let's do this right. So, Chris, we've referred to, you know, a little bit at this point in the show, the you know, how the site started and grew and things like that. But when you started with the site, you started as a poster on the forum, basically.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Can you talk
Yeah.
about that? And it was the name, like, so you, I mean, I guess you can get into it. I don't want to take the story from you, but it's kind of funny. The name that leads you to the site winds up being the first Red Sox minor leaguer, probably only one, to post on our forum, and that we found out it was him.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So Randy Newsom, who played with the Red Sox, we went to college together.
Mhm.
And he played both football and baseball at Tufts. Baseball was his sport. He played football. I was a couple years older than him, and we knew each other. And then, you know, just knowing him, and he was huge into baseball. He got signed as a minor league free agent after college, and I thought it was cool. I was like, wow, that's really a couple guys in the Reds on the Tufts baseball team I think had been drafted or were minor league free agents, and I followed them. Right, you know, they were in my class or a year older than me. So I was following Randy, and I was like, man, I'm just curious. Is anybody watching his games? Like, are anybody saying anything? You know, it's about, you know, what's a scouting report on? You know, I just thought it was kind of funny, and I Googled random Randy Newsom scouting report, and it took the first thing that popped up in the Google feed was his player page at Sox Prospects. So I was like, oh wow, and I clicked on the link, and it brought up the site. And I started clicking around, and there was, like, you know, the top 10, you know, the old rankings, and there was the player pages. There were some stats, right? And I was clicking around, and then there was a form, and I'll be straight. This was like 2005, 6ish. I mean, I hadn't been on message board. That wasn't popular, you know, back when I was in college, right? Message boards, it was IMs, like it was just starting with kind of this internet boom. When I saw there was a form, and I started clicking around that and reading it and kind of getting a kick out of it. And I checked back in, you know, every once, to see if there was any updates. And I noticed that the rankings were starting to get updated. And so break, you know, that I started looking, I was on the website there, and I think I started posting a little bit. And at that time I was on a work assignment, and I happened to be in Huntsville, Alabama. And I was deployed alone. And obviously, at the time, they had the Huntsville Stars, who were the Milwaukee Brewers affiliate.
Double A,
And
right?
there was Double A. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was that was in the era of when Ryan Braun was coming up through the minor leagues, because I did see him there in Huntsville. And there was a bar next to the hotel that I consistently stayed at every week, because I was commuting back and forth between Boston and Huntsville, and they had Nesson. So I love to watch the Red Sox games, as you guys know. And so this guy had Nesson, and I would watch the Red Sox games at night there. And I was just talking to the owner, and he gave me all these season tickets. He gave me tickets to the Huntsville Stars, and he's like, "Oh, go check this out." So I went to the Huntsville Stars a couple times, and it was great. I could sit behind home plate and watch. And there was all scouts. I was like the only person, there was a few people there, and it was a bunch of scouts. And I just happened to start talking to guys there. And I made a contact that, just talking the game. And he was like, "Hey, if you ever, if you're ever around, or you're ever thinking about, you have a decent eye," because we had been talking about different players and stuff like that, blah, blah, blah. Right. And then I started posting on the Sox Prospects message board more frequently.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I had reached out to Mike about, liking the site, things like that. And I think we met up at Futures at Fenway. And then we started talking about, well, I was pretty close to Lowell, right? So I could go to some games and check out some of the new draft picks. And then it just started snowballing from there, really. And that was around the 2006, 2007 timeframe.
That sounds right. And I'm trying, at what point did we port you over to the staff? Because I recall it was a situation where it's like, okay, this SEM 21 guy knows what he's talking about.
And those are my initials, Christopher E. Mellen. Right. And 21 was my football number.
There you go.
In high school and college. So that was the genesis of that one.
For the people out there who didn't have AOL Instant Messenger, like that was how you came up with your AOL Instant Messenger name. It was your initials or something like that.
Messenger too, yeah.
And a number that you wore in a sport or like your year you were born or something. But yeah, okay. So we bring you into the site, and the scouting at that point was very different than it was. And I think, you had put it in the Jen McCaffrey article, and I think this is fair. It was more, the scouting reports were more biographies than scouting reports. I think that's pretty fair to say. Right. So, and this is for both of you, like, how did we make that shift? Because I think that's really when that shift started, was when Chris came on as the scouting guy.
Well, I think like everything, and if you remember back in those days, everything we did was on the message board. Like we would create,
for the most part,
firsthand threads, right? And I was consistently going. Lowell was close to my office, so I was able to go over to Lowell. Obviously, I had a lot less responsibilities in the home front back then, right? And we were going over to Lowell, and I was basically posting, firsthand narratives of players and what I saw, and like, oh, so and so hit a base hit off a fat, started talking like that. And it was really it was really our community. It was really the message board community, the post readers of the site, who just kept asking questions and asking for more. And I was like, well, and I read through the responses to the posts and see what people were asking. So I started focusing on some of the questions they were asking, right? So it started off kind of, not when I say remedial, just like, how fast is so and so throwing, right? And we started talking more like that. And then being at the games consistently, right there in Lowell, started meeting some people. I actually met the gentleman who I met down there in Huntsville was going up to Lowell, and we met up a few times. And then I actually, he was actually someone I met early on, and we kind of stopped course, he kind of went on to other things. We stopped corresponding, but he was introducing me to people.
Sure.
And we were also, the Red Sox scouting staff was going to the games too, and started, following up on the draft picks and things like that. We were just having a lot of dialogue and discussion with various people, and it started evolving into, picking people's brains and asking questions and learning how to see the game from the way a scout would, and provide that back to our community. And then really when the response was really good at Lowell, we started talking about, hey, let's get to Pawtucket, right? And then Portland was only like 90 miles from me when I was in Waltham, right? And Waltham, Massachusetts, for our listeners out there. That was less than a 2-hour drive, and we started going to Portland. We started expanding it, right? And then then I got into the we can talk about the early Fort Myers trips. We started going on trips. We started going on adventures, right? Fall instructional league and different things. It really blossomed from that, from that standpoint. But it was really meeting people in the industry and talking to them, and then trying to do stuff that no one was really doing. And that was the conversation that I had with Jason Parks when I met with him and was talking with him a lot before I went over to Baseball Prospectus, is that Sox Prospects was doing something different than what other websites were doing with the firsthand accounts and, the interactions and providing that type of information to people out there, and people wanted more and more and more and more of it. And we just blossomed it into the whole news feed and all that stuff.
I just remember, for me, I was going to games more back in those days, like 2004 to 7, before my daughter was born. And I was writing some firsthand accounts myself. And I was getting to all those local ones. But then when you came along, it was just like, this guy is like 10 times better at the scouting stuff than me, and like taking it to not just another level, like another 3 levels up, both because you had such a great eye and because you built all those contacts and you could get the actual radar gun readings rather than just a stadium gun, which is always 3 to 5 miles an hour off. So I remember that to me was like when it went from like hobby to like, man, this is real.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah. And
I mean, I was always interested in, and it was like, I like to, we've all watched games together. I like to watch games in a certain way and, break them down. And it was just, some of it was feedback, and I'm not, it was when I was talking to people and they were like, hey, I read what you wrote or saw what you posted, and that was, that was dead on accurate. And then, or, we'd get into discussions, and they were like, and I had a couple of guys who were, pushing me, that I had met, that were like, keep doing more. Like, don't be afraid, right? Just kind of like, see what you see and start making some calls, right? And seeing, what I mean calls is like saying like, hey, I think this guy could be a big league regular, or hey, I don't think this guy won't get past AAA, things like that, right? Don't be afraid to make calls. Don't be afraid to, show what you see, because that's what we do, right?
What were some early ones that you, or I guess it doesn't even need to be early, but what were some ones that you remember? And even if it's something that once you went to Baseball Prospectus, and for those who don't know, Chris, when he moved on from being our director of scouting, he went over to Baseball Prospectus, which at that point had, a really good, respected minor league scouting prospect team over there that like had been built by Kevin Goldstein and then Jason Parks. And there was a team over there that was great. And Chris was like running the show. One of the guys running it was you, and you were co-running it with, I can't remember.
Nick Falaris. Yeah.
Falaris, right. Who went on to do 2080.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think it's, do you remember like sticking your neck out there on anyone and being right? And I mean, I guess ideally it would be for the better, but in either direction where it really kind of validated your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot. I mean, you're wrong more than you're right. Right.
Sure.
That's what I learned. Right. There was, I look back at some of those things. I've looked back at some things, and I've reread some things, and I'm like, man, that was dead wrong. Right. But you learn from those things too.
It happens.
I'm trying to think of early guys. Here was an example of a guy. That I think we used to have. This was early on. We had I was thinking about debates we had. We had a Stolmy Pimentel. Remember him?
Yeah.
Or Pimentel, versus like Brock Hunsinger, right? Pimentel was a guy I liked a lot, who showed it in the low minors, and then kind of sealing down. I think he didn't end up making the majors eventually, but he didn't make the majors in any capacity that
he wasn't up for very long. Yeah,
right. But that was an early guy that I'll say I latched onto. That you latch onto. Right. And you start to, sometimes you want yourself to be right sometimes. And, you kind of push angles that maybe, you're not seeing, you're not really seeing or whatever. But that was a guy I remember, latching onto early in those early stages of following the player and seeing the player multiple times and starting to make it part of the schedule that I'm going to time it up in the games. And I'm going to, ask around too, to make sure that he's pitching. It's scheduled to pitch to see multiple times. And that was where, that's where that's where things got sharper and things got better too, right? Where you could you could cast a net and starting to follow players, right? Players of interest and things like that.
Stolmy got 53 and a third innings in the majors, and actually, Chris, he pitched in Colombia in the 2021-22 offseason. So
Wow,
he's actually still kicking
right after
around.
COVID. Yeah.
Chris, I got a question. And I'm not remembering this correctly, but I remember talking with you about this at your wedding. You have like made a real effect on a real trade, from what I remember, that there was a player
go there
and a scout that you were talking to, and you're like, you got to stay an extra day to see this guy. And the scout was like, I never even heard of this guy. Who are you even talking about? He stayed an extra day and ended up being in a trade like that year. What
That
was that story?
That was Roman Mendez, if you remember.
Oh,
Remember
yeah,
him, flamethrower, right? And that was he was down in Lowell at the time. I definitely had that was
Lowell or
definitely after I had
Greenville?
acquired. Well, it was definitely Lowell. It was
Okay.
Lowell, I remember. Yeah, and I had acquired a radar gun at that point, which was, that was a game changer, right? So it wasn't the stadium gun. He was like popping 99, 100 on my gun, which was not in style back then, right? Everybody didn't throw that hard, and he was a flamethrower. And just in conversations with multiple guys that were there that night, right, when he came in and pitched an inning or two, it was pretty electric in terms of the velocity. And I was like, I like this. I like this kid, right? I've seen him a couple times. He can throw hard. And sure enough, he was in that Jared Soto Lamakia trade on my wedding, which was funny, July 31st when I got married. And he was traded and I remember it right before, Mike, it was right before the ceremony. I remember everybody, you and John Singer of Blast from the Past coming over and saying, "Hey, did you see this?" And I was like, "See what?" I'm like, "I'm just getting ready to get mad." I was like, "Geez, dude, wow." Like, yeah, like, wow. Like,
that Texas
that
scout wouldn't have seen Rowan Mendez if it wasn't for you. So that trade, I mean, it probably would have gone down, but maybe in a different way.
Right, exactly. So it was like one of those things where that was 2010 back that, because I do know the year I was married. And I was like, man, we're doing something here. People, it wasn't that they were listening, but it was like, wow, like, we're on the map in terms of like people like reading things and supplementing, what they're seeing, or checking us out to see what we're seeing, right? And I thought it was cool. And looking back at it, at the time, I was disappointed because I didn't want him traded from
Sure.
my hometown team, but
Mendez did eventually pitch in 3 games for the Red Sox after he came back from the Rangers, which I had completely forgotten about in 2015. But I guess, Chris, you mentioned earlier, and maybe a couple more, we'll wrap up, but some of the thoughts and stories and stuff that come back to you when we reached out. It doesn't even need to be an on-field thing, and maybe let's make sure it's an appropriate thing, because I can think of some that are not fit for public consumption. What were some of the good stories that came back to you? Anything come to mind that, like I said, it could just be an off-field, site shenanigans type thing, or kind of what pops into your head?
I thought about the trip. I thought about the trips before. Again, talking about the site's evolution, right, and where it's gotten to and where it went to. I thought about our. I recently was I traveled both personally. I traveled for work recently, just recently within the last month. I had a couple of trips, right, and I was going through airports, like you do when you connect flights. And I thought about that first trip to Fort Myers, where we like flew down on a Friday, and like Mike gets off the plane at like 11, and we hoof over to the old facility, right?
City of Palms. This isn't even City of Palms, because they were separate.
Right. Yeah, they were down at the old complex, and like we stayed at like a Hampton Inn or something. Like 3 or 4 of us crammed into a room, right? One room, and we thought it was like the best thing ever. And then then just a few short years later, we were running the Fort Report from Fort Myers. We were down there for a week, and it was like this big thing. And it just how quick it evolved. And I thought about that first trip to Fort Myers, and we went for 24 hours basically. And like we were all jacked up that we were watching batting practice, and we're like, whoa, like we're watching batting practice here from 10 feet away, right? No one's around, watching some of those guys take batting practice. And then just thinking about, subsequently, like a few short years later, some of those trips were how professional they were. And it was like, the objective behind. I'm sure that, you know, all the fun that we had too after being on the field, but you know, thinking about how the evolution of those spring training trips were and how they became like our big season kickoff, right? It was like the big kickoff of the prospect season for us, you know, that the spring training trip that we got down there and saw the players and those different things and did the reports, the fort report, the scouting reports we released, you know, all those different things that we did at that those spring training trips.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that the way that trip evolved, I think, really does kind of mirror how the site did evolve. It wasn't just us going down and being in awe; it was us being there for a job, right? Like we had stuff to
And
do.
the first time was like we went for 24 hours, and then we were talking like, man, maybe we could do it for 2 days, right? Maybe we could do this for 2 days. We
Can
could
you
go down
imagine?
on like Thursday, and we could see Friday and Saturday definitively, right? And then it became like Then it became like like a whole week, right? Just being down there, and you know, I also thought about some of the people that we met, you know, down there. One of them that popped into my mind just when I was driving home the other day was, you know, I remember when we met Nick, the late and great Nick Cafardo there at, we met him at the New Jet Blue, and he was standing there and we introduced ourselves, and he knew who we were. And he was very complimentary of the website and what it was, and said he was a reader and a fan. And we talked, Mike, I remember we talked with Nick for like an hour, right?
Yeah.
Down there, talked with him for a long time. He's a lot taller than I thought he was going to be, if I remember. Yeah, and we just thought about, you know, some of the things that he was saying about, you know, reading the website and the things that we were doing, right? And we were big fans of his on the beat, right? And what he was doing. And you know, that's what the site had become. That we were maybe not quite, you know, media peers, right? But you know, we were talking with all these different people, like, you know, we were you know, part of the club, or like we were being read, right? Rob Bradford was another one when we ran into him for the first time, right? And he was talking about the website and liking things, and told us keep doing more and more.
You remember we didn't have any money, and we didn't start the donation drive yet, and we had a Hyundai, and there was 6 of us that went down one year. This is probably 09, I don't know, 08 or 09. And so we had to like squeeze 6 of us into a Hyundai. And the best way to do it at one point was to lay Singer across the back seat, so like vertically, sitting over 3 people. And we went through the drive-through with Taco Bell, and he's screaming, but lying across the thing, getting I don't know. I just have this memory of us getting Dorito flavored tacos at Taco Bell with Singer sitting sideways across the back seat.
Yeah, I mean,
I
those
remember
were, like I said, like a dream kind of at times. But you know, just the content and the things that we were putting out and able to do on those trips. And again, some of those, you know, a lot of those trips then became from the donation drive, and you know, driven by the community and what the people wanted, right? And so there was an extra responsibility, right, that we needed to make sure we covered what people wanted to be covered, right, and these different things. And it, like Pat puts it, it did become a little bit of a job, but you know, it was one of the most fun things that I've ever done.
Michael, anything else for our esteemed guest?
I think that covers what I want to cover. It was,
Yeah.
great
We could do like an entire episode, but you know, we don't want to.
We probably should at some point. But I mean, like I said up front, I mean, it's unbelievable that the website has chugged along for 20 years.
Yeah,
I mean, I know that the story of how Mike founded it during, you know, his semester break from law school, right, and his coding and putting the website up, and you know what it became is unbelievable. And there's been a lot of great, you know, staff members that have come through, and there's a lot of good staff members now continuing to put out what people want. And I know that, you know, people are relying on it for information, and you know, it's something that, you know, I'm really proud to have been a part of and see what it's become and where it is. And I mean, like I said, a 20-year anniversary. A lot of things don't last that long.
It's possible you haven't been on the podcast in a decade, because or a little less than a decade, because the last one I'm seeing is December of 2014. Might have been your last episode.
That would, yeah, that would have timed up with probably that year's top 10.
Yeah, that was definitely when you were MVP.
And then we went through a kind of a change. Parks had moved on I think he moved on to the Cubs. And you know, that was his first role. Valeris and I were running it. There was kind of a change in ownership, change in direction, and we kind of all went, you know, our ways separate ways in terms of doing different things.
Well, I mean, it's a beautiful thing to have you back on, brother.
Thank you so much.
It's let's not do 9 years till the next one.
Sure.
And
I'm available in the evenings.
we
I get
need to
home from
petition them
practice.
to bring back Futures at Fenway and just get everyone together for or even if they don't have that, just for drinks. Maybe we'll do
Futures
that
of Fenway was
or
another
something.
good one. Yeah.
Yeah. I can still remember I've got like one of the last photos I have of you in my phone is in the stands and you're like sticking your tongue out at me because that's a thing people did in
Yeah.
photos at that point.
Yeah. I still do that in photos. My kids do that too.
Oh, that makes sense at that point.
Yeah.
Beautiful. All right, man. Well, thank you very much. And
Thanks, Chris.
yeah, man, this is great. Awesome. All right. Well, a great conversation as always with Chris Mellen, who it had been a long time since I had seen or talked to that dude. So that was great excuse to get on the horn with Chris. And I think with that, we should probably just go ahead and wrap up. We're on like hour 4 of pulling the curtain back, and I'm trying to just not use the word self-congratulatory. No, it's a celebration, and it's a celebration of all of you out there with us. It's not just a celebration of us. It's a celebration of the community that's kind of grown around the site. It's a celebration of, what all of us, listeners, readers, folks who've worked for us, folks who've helped run the site, folks who's helped us out in doing all those things, all of us together, just what has grown out of this has been so cool. So I think with that, we will go into some parting words, some final thoughts, what on hang up and listen would call after balls, whatever. Your kind of final parting shot, looking back at the site being around for 20 years. And we'll start with James. Mr. Dunn, take it away.
Thank you very much, Chris. So right before I got on, my 10-year-old daughter was down here with me, and she said it was cool that we were doing a 20th anniversary special. She asked if we were on YouTube, and then she asked if we were going to also do a 50th anniversary special.
I kind of hope not.
So I didn't quite know how to respond to that, but I will take the 20-year celebration as it comes. It's been wonderful to work with such an awesome crew. The 3 of you, plus an amazing staff of writers, moderators on the forum, getting to go to games, getting to see guys come up through the system and follow them. It's always such a blast and such a pleasure, and discussing that with everyone, with you guys and the fans. It's always a blast. So I don't know about 50 years, but here's to several more.
That's awesome. Beat that, Kundal.
I don't know if I can.
No, you can't. I can't either.
That was well played.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I would just say thank you to Mike. First off, I mean, Mike, you started this whole operation when I was much. I was young.
If you threw the year out, I was going to riot.
I was going to say I might not have been in high school yet when you started the website.
Yikes!
But yeah, it's awesome being able to, because I grew up reading it. I mean, that's how I started, following the farm system, was reading SoxProspects when I was still very young and naive. And it's pretty cool how, just kind of like a cold email asking if you needed anything from a random Salem game has turned into what it has, this many years later. And so thank you to you and the Chris. Obviously, Chris was there before me and has been there the entire time. And he's someone I've worked very closely with on a lot of different things, and consider him a true friend too. So it's been a lot of fun getting to know you guys and getting to kind of go through this together. Because now we're kind of hitched at the wagon together. So yeah. I guess it's pretty cool. It's evolved into a group thing, and Mike, our fearless leader, though, still leading the way all these years later. And it's just crazy where it's gone, and I'm excited to see where it's going to go from here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, appreciate that, and I'll upfront co-sign everything Mike's about to say, because he's going to do the specific thank yous. Because if we all did everyone we wanted to thank, we'd be here forever. For a part of this that, one round of it is great. We don't need to hear it 4 times. But this crew has been great. I mean, I the crew here, I mean, I can think, thinking back to that, that draft retrospective project. I mean, my wife making fun of me, having late night conversations with Jim. My wife has literally like we've had semi-serious conversations about how she feels like she has to share me with Ian. Dead serious. Both in saying that and the conversations. I mean, she's kind of half kidding, but I probably talked to Ian more than I talked to anyone but said wife. So that's been a cool, relationship to have grow doing the podcast and working on stuff with the site. And that's my dude up there. So, back at you on everything. And I've said, I alluded to on the prior episode that Mike and I, we think the same way and we worked together. We're from the same hometown. It feels like we are related. It's weird to say, but like, it's kind of wild, to think about even like the degrees of separation we have, or like his best friend's mom was my CCD teacher. Like it was, crazy little things like that we've come to realize.
That's the most small town, like New England thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because everyone knew like, oh, that was blah, 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 CCD teacher, oh, yes, that was, Little League coach is your uncle's brother's, blah, blah, blah. Like, yeah, that was, it's always like that in those small towns.
But like, as someone who has had like both an effect on my career directly and never mind just starting the site and getting to know you through the site, that's been really one of the great highlights too, Mike. So thank you for everything. And then like you're gonna thank everyone else as well. I'll co-sign that, like I said, but this has been a great experience. It's been a defining thing in my life for, gosh, I mean, I'm probably coming up on, you started it in 03.
You're coming up on 16, maybe 15, 16.
I started in 05 or 06. So I think I'm coming
18 years?
I'm coming up on 18 years, which is kind of crazy to think about. I've graduated high school in SoxProspects years, I think maybe. So wild to think about. So
old.
Yeah, that too. There's some, not all the hairs coming out of my head are black at this point. So put it that way. You may or may not be responsible for some of them, Ian. Mr. Andrews, you have the floor.
Sure. I have somewhat of a similar story to James. Just quick, a few weeks ago, my daughter, who's 15, randomly asked, like, she like saw something about the website and she like knew what it was and knew I did it, but like I don't think that it's like really ever been something that's like delved into her mind. And she's like, "Can you tell me more about your website?" And it's like, I can go through the history a little bit, but I'll let you read this athletic article. And she like sat down and read it like word for word and like didn't just ignore it like a normal teen girl. And afterwards she just turned to me and goes, "Dad, this is like really cool. I'm like very impressed." And that's not something that a 15-year-old girl like ever says. So that made me feel really good. It was kind of cool. But beyond that, I mean, I've said my thank yous to you three. I think that we've had a lot of self-flagellation on this one, but you three, like, thank you so much for the like endless work that you put into this website, and how talented you all are. Just love you guys. So thank you so much for all that hard work. And now I just want to thank a bunch of other people. So give me a little bit here that we have a volunteer staff of like 15 to 20 people at any given time, that they all do this basically for free. They work hard just for the love of baseball, for the love of the site. And so thank them, a lot of whom have been here for a long time. Jim Crowell, we talked a little bit about him, senior staff writer. He's been with us since July of 2011. He's one of our lead writers. He became a part owner in 2018, and he helps just edit and write a lot of the pieces on SoxProspects News. Mike Reynolds, we've talked a little bit about, senior database engineer. He runs the stats database for the site, which is a big part of it. It's not easy. It requires daily updates and tweaks. That not only has like a stats database, there's a schedule, standings, lineups. He's also a co-owner of the site, as is Will Woodward, senior staff writer, who's been with us since 2011. And he just works on writing a lot of pieces on SoxProspects News. So special thanks to those guys. Some of our writers and editors, Harry Burnham has been with us since 2014, contributes as a senior editor. He's kind of the de facto lead editor for the Cup of Coffee, the weekly notes, and pretty much a lot of other news page content. So thank you, Harry, for your 9 years of contribution now, going on 10. Nick Rabasco, senior staff writer. Nick was a college baseball player. He joined us in November of 2014, got promoted to senior staff writer in this year. He works on the cup of coffee, the notes, and has taken on a little bit of scouting responsibilities as well. He knows the game really well. Sean McGrath, senior staff writer and editor, has been with us for 5.5 years. Got a promotion this year as well. He's kind of like the staff's Swiss Army knife, kind of slides between editing and writing whatever is needed, takes on some regular segments, features, and is always willing to take on anything that comes his way. So thank you, Sean. Couple of newer members of the site, the news page. Chris Parrish is one of our editors. He's been with us since February of 2021, but has already kind of become like a key part of the editing team. Willingness to sign up for weekend duty is big. It's not always the most glamorous job. And he'll also kind of pitch in last minute, like pinch hit when we need someone to write a cup of coffee if someone's not able to do it any given day. And then Brendan Campbell joined us last year, a valuable member of both our cup of coffee and notes team. So that's a team that that James manages. So thank you guys for all your hard work on the news page. We also have a team of web editors that helps kind of update the main site from the homepage, transactions, rosters pages, and other things like that. Allison Gagney has been with us since late 2016. She does a lot of updates to the stats on the homepage pretty regularly and has done some work on our stats database. She got a promotion to senior web editor this year. Big props to Ed Hand, our social media manager. He's really taken our social media content to the next level. That guy works his ass off. Really good at his job. Always there tweeting game content, tweeting great content, has some of his own content on the side as well. He's been with us since December of 2019, got a promotion to social media manager this year. And like I said, runs our Twitter and our other socials. Thank you, Ed. Brian Lombardo joined the staff last year, and he does all of our graphics. He's our graphic designer for mostly for our social media pages. So thank you, Brian, for your hard work. Couple other guys that do edits to the homepage, primarily stats updates. Those stats on the homepage get updated by hand, just because the way the website is set up. So that takes someone to go in early morning every morning to update those stats for 30 different players, which is not nothing. That's something dedication to do it for a whole season. So
Takes a minute. Yeah.
Manuel De Moya helps with that. He's been with us for almost 2 years now. He's also based in the Dominican. He's kind of our feet on the ground there. And Ryan Delano joined the staff last year and helps with those web edits. So thank you guys. We talked a little bit about Kelly O'Connor. It deserves more than just a shout out. Like her photography is incredible,
Kelly's the best.
extraordinary. Without her, like the site would just be garbage. Like the photos just add so much flavor, and she's so good at it, and she's so dedicated. I can't thank you enough, Kelly. Each of these guys just push me to be like, thank Kelly like 10 million times if you can. So thank you, Kelly. You are the best. My brother, Chris Andrews, does our IT on the side. That's my least favorite part of this gig, when stuff goes sideways, hardware and software wise. I'm terrible at that. Network functionality, that type of stuff. He's been helping us with that stuff since 2010. So thank you, Chris.
I'm sorry that I started laughing. I thought you were about to say that working with him was your least favorite part of the
Oh, no.
website. And I was like, your brother's great. What the hell are you
Probably
talking
that
about?
too, but
That would have been great.
doing the IT stuff is just, I hate it. And
Miserable. Yeah.
You do
that's his
hate
job.
it.
He's just
You
like so
complain
good.
about IT
Yeah.
stuff, so yeah.
And we have a group of moderators. Like our forum is like more than half of our page views. It's a very popular part of the site. I imagine most of our listeners have been on it, but if you haven't, hop on. There's such good discussion there. Because it's so well moderated, you can see what happens when a forum is not well moderated. It turns into garbage. But Norm, Joel, Jason, Michael, John, all of who've been here for quite a bit of time. Thank you so much for all of that work you guys do moderating the forum. It's not an easy job. There's a lot of pain in the ass stuff that goes on behind the scenes that you guys handle gloriously. So thank you for that work. And I'd be remiss if I don't thank some ex-staffers that did a ton of work on the website. I don't have the ability to thank them all. I unfortunately did not keep like a list in one place of every staffer we've had. There's probably over 100. But some of the ones that deserve big shout outs are Matt Hegel, former managing editor. He was a former owner, was with us for a very long time, was also kind of a Swiss Army knife that just did anything, came to a lot of spring trainings with us, had a lot of fun with Matt. So thank you, Matt, for your work over the years. And another Matt Picard. I had a tougher period where my work had to take over and I couldn't focus much time on the website. And Matt took over editing the main site for a few years and was just a boss, and was awesome. So thank you so much, Matt. Really appreciated you covering me for a time when I wasn't able to put everything I could into the site. And then John Singer, we had some stories about him throughout this episode. Just a funny guy, big personality, bold. Was also a Swiss Army knife that did a lot of stuff for the site. So thank you, John, for your contributions over the years. And then I want to rattle off some names that I remember, that I feel like I said, like I'd be remiss if I didn't mention by name. Is Adam Fox, Ian Theodoridis, Tim Healy, Katie Morrison, Chaz Fiorino, Joe Tetrault, Dick Duggan, JP Kitson, Steve Henley, John Gray, Don Hislop, Keith Carl, Dan Hansen, and Tommy Castle. Thank you guys for all the hard work, and sorry to anybody else I didn't list. I really apologize that I don't have that comprehensive list of all the ex-staffers, but thank you to you guys as well. And then just kind of lastly, a couple other items. I want to thank all the baseball peeps that have kind of helped us over the years, from people in the front office, scouts, people on the Red Sox beat, prospect beat. Some writers specifically that have helped us a lot over the years are Alex Spear, Jim Callis, Peter Gammons, Gordon Eads. Thank you guys so much. I don't want to call out the other people by name, but it's just so awesome how respectful and helpful that scouts and other writers and front office people have been. It's just been a blessing, a part of this gig to get that help and respect from those type of people. And then last, thank you to you, the listeners, readers, contributors, forum posters. We do this because we're not making big bucks on this. We're doing it because the respect we get from you guys. We appreciate that. I posted today on Twitter and the forum, and we got so many nice messages about our 20th anniversary and how much you guys love the site. And that's the type of stuff that keeps us going. So just thank you to you guys for keep reading, keep listening, keep contributing. We couldn't do it without you guys. So thank you. And with that, I think I'll call it. So just thank you to all those peeps, and thank you guys, and signing off.
Love it. All right. What say we send this one out with El Chambo for old time's sake? Get a little bit of that chacarone in there. Love it.
Nice.
Shout out to the little spinners. All right. Well, thank you all for listening to this. I think we'll call it there for this one. We appreciate all of you listening. We'll be back in your eardrums with more normal type stuff soon. The Greenville Drive won the South Atlantic League, so there's your prospect news for this episode. The minor league season will be over, I guess, the next time we record again. So
weird,
kind of wild to think about. Another year in the books. So plenty to talk about there, and you'll hear it here on the podcast feed. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll be back in your eardrums soon.
Chacarón.